Hey, what's going on? This is Sports Truth, and I'm your favorite host in the entire world, Jordan Harris. Before we get into the video, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. I really do appreciate that. So, today's video is a real cool one. So, we'll be talking about a commitment that we got from the transfer portal that seems like he's probably going to be going elsewhere. We'll talk about who that player is. But also, there's a Storytime episode. So, towards the end of this video, I'll be telling a story of something that I experienced that I learned a whole lot from. And I promise you, if you watch it, if you pay attention to it, if you listen to it, I promise you, it'll entertain you, but you'll also get something from it. I guarantee it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the video then. Who is this player that I'm talking about? So he is a transfer commit. Um, and this happened I guess he announced he was transferring to the Hurricanes just a couple of weeks ago. So, who is this player I'm talking about? I'm talking about Rodney Hill from the dreaded Florida State Seminoles. We'll talk a little bit about this timeline because his timeline is all over the place. It happened in a really short window, but it just like seemed like he was going up and down a whole lot. So, initially, he announced on Twitter or X. I'm just going to start calling it X from now on because I keep going back and forth. So, he announced on X that he was going to be transferring from Florida State, and he said he was going to be going to FAMU. All right, so he announced that on X, and it's kind of a quiet transition, to be honest with you. I didn't know much about Rodney Hill when he played at Florida State, so the fact that he was leaving there and going to FAMU, I didn't think much of it. And then soon after Rodney Hill decided that he was going to FAMU, the head coach at FAMU decided to leave, and I believe he went to Duke as like one of the, obviously not the head coach there because Manny Diaz is there, but one of the support coaches there, right? So he ended up leaving FAMU, and then when he left, Rodney Hill says, "Okay, well since he's going, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to open up my transfer options," and then he decided that he was going to go to Miami. He posted that on X. That's part of what this picture is here. So there were some people who were excited about it. I honestly was not too excited because, like I said, I didn't know much about the guy. He didn't play a whole lot. He did score a touchdown in one of the blowout games this past year. I saw a lot of people in my comment section on the video that I made when he announced he was transferring to Miami. I saw a lot of people talking about the fact that he could end up being like a punt return specialist or a kickoff return specialist. And I'm like, cool, that's fine, but it's nothing for me to go, there's nothing for me to get too hyped about, really. It was just a transfer, and then he wasn't going to be a scholarship transfer. He was a walk-on as well. So, no, I mean, I got to give love to walk-ons because my brother was a walk-on, ended up starting for the Wichita State Shockers after walking on for the first couple years, ended up being a starter for his last year. So, shout out to all the walk-ons out there. Much love to you. So after a little while, like after he announced that he was going to the Hurricanes, all of a sudden, the coach, the brand new coach at FAMU, they ended up promoting a coach from within at FAMU. He was giving a press conference, and it was quiet, like it was, quiet press conference. FAMU is not going to get everybody's attention, right? So he's giving a press conference, and then he let something. I don't know if he let it slip and he wasn't supposed to, but he ended up saying, "quote Rodney Hill is back in the fold." So people were like, well, "What does that mean?" So now people are starting to think that since FAMU ended up promoting from within, Rodney Hill is familiar with the coaches who are at FAMU now. And even though the head coach left, Rodney Hill still seems to be comfortable with the coaches who are there right now at this present time. So after the new head coach announced that at his press conference, all of a sudden, the post that Rodney Hill made showing that he was committed to the Hurricanes on X, all of a sudden, that post disappeared, just gone. So, quick little timeline there, but all of the dots or all the arrows point to Rodney Hill most likely decommitting to Miami and then going to play at FAMU. And if you ask me, it seems like it's the right move. Like, he was going to come and be a walk-on at Miami. I don't know how much he would play there. To me, I think he probably would hardly ever see the field at Miami, especially with their running back room the way that it is. He may do some special team stuff here and there, but if you have an option of playing very sparingly at at Miami or going and being a star player at FAMU, I probably would choose to be a star player at FAMU and take my chances and see what happens. That's what I would do. So I can't really blame the young man. I think it makes sense. It's a pretty logical move for him. It has not happened yet, but I'm telling y'all, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. I don't have any inside information, but one thing that the good Lord has blessed me with is logic. I'm able to connect dots that are simple to connect and keep a level head with all this stuff, and all the dots point to, or all the arrows point to him going to FAMU, which is fine. Let me know if you all are, what you think about this. Are you frustrated if he does end up going to FAMU? Do you not care? Are you kind of like me where you're like, man, God bless you, brother. I didn't think you do much at Miami anyway. So God bless. I hope you do really well. Is that your mindset? Let me know what you think about that. Really curious to know about that. Okay. Now let's get into the story time real quick. This is something that happened to me when I was about, this is in 2015 actually. So I can tell you that. It was definitely in 2015. So mostly I know that I'm an entrepreneur. I own a few businesses. So I'll take you back to, I started my first business in 2015, but we'll go back even further than that. When I first got out of high school, when I first graduated from high school, I went straight into college and started, learning and doing things there. But most of my friends, they didn't, well, I think all of my friends actually, they were like, nah, I'm cool on college. I'm going right into the workforce. So they started working at these jobs, these entry-level jobs, like Walmart, Target, restaurants, and stuff like that. They weren't making a whole lot, but they were actually making money. They were making more than I was because I was going to school and then working part-time hours here and there at a call center that I hated. FYI, hated that call center. Worked there for 4 years. Worst job I ever had. Anyway, so I'm going to school full-time, and my friends are working at their jobs full-time. So they're making money. I'm not hardly making any. Okay? So after I went to school for 4 or 5 years, finally graduated from college, by that time, all of my friends who jumped straight into the workforce, they had been at their jobs for 4 or 5 years. So now, instead of being line level employees like they started, now, or at that point, they were supervisors, or if they got a couple of promotions, they were managers at that point. So now they're making some pretty decent money, right? They're not just making the $7.25 per hour that a lot of entry level jobs pay here in Wichita. Some of them do, I should say, not a lot. But now they're starting to make a decent salary. All right. So after I graduated college, again, 5 years, I think it was 4.5 years for me, graduated college. All of my friends had been at their jobs for 4.5 years. So they're starting to make some money now. They're starting to get a little bit of pull at their job. 3 years later, I ended up getting fired from the job that I was working at. And so that's 8 years after graduation now, 7 to 8 years after graduating high school. So now I'm at a very fresh start. I got no money saved up. I'm unemployed. This is 8 years, 7 years after my high school graduation. Over here, my friends, they had been working all this time, 7 or 8 years at the same jobs. So now instead of being the line level employee or being the supervisor, now almost all of them are in the management position or close to it. And they're making way more than I'm making because I have no job. I'm just now starting my first business, which is a janitorial company. I had, I think, one client at this time. So I was making $667 a month doing this job. And they were probably making $667 a week doing their jobs, right? So that was the situation I was in. And I remember one day I was going through Facebook, which is one of the worst places to look at because it somehow always seems to make you feel a little bit worse about yourself. I don't know how that works, but it typically does that. So I'm on Facebook one day and I see somebody, it wasn't one of my friends, but somebody that I went to school with, somebody I graduated with, they had a car and then they were showing these new Jordans that they got. So you'll see the little this or that on here. It's like this janitor person over here or Michael Jordan over there. And I'll explain what that means all the way in just a second. But so he had on Facebook this post of him just buying these Jordans, and he showed like his closet and he had a few Jordans in there. And I'm like, man, I don't went to school. I've done all this work. I've done things the right way. And now I got this little business that I just started. He didn't go to college and he's making good money buying Jordans. He's got a car, and I'm just on the struggle bus trying to make it, making $667 a month. I'm like, man, that's crazy. So my wife and I at that time, we had the small janitorial company, and then my wife had a home daycare. So I would be in the basement of our house, and I had like this fold out lawn table that I would sit at, and it was basically like my office, and I would have my computer there typing and trying to figure things out in business. And she would be upstairs on the main level with the kids that she was watching in the home daycare. I think she had 8 kids at that time that she was seeing. So I'd be in the basement working on stuff, and I'm hearing babies crying and hollering and playing and all that stuff right above me. Not an ideal situation, right? So when you see your friends or you see people that you graduated flourishing, it looks like they're flourishing and they're buying what they want to and they're doing what they want to do. And then you look at yourself and you're like, man, got this little company started. We're not making much. We're struggling. But then my phone rang. And I was like, okay. I remember praying that my phone would ring a lot of the nights, which was weird. But I'd be like, please make this phone ring and bring us a new client. Do something for me, please, Lord. So my phone rang one day, and I answered it, and it was somebody on the other line. And they said, hey, Jordan, is this? And they said the name of my cleaning company. And I'm like, yeah. And they said, do you clean floors? And at that time, we did not clean floors. The only thing we did was typical janitorial services. Take the trash out, clean the bathrooms, sweep and mop your floors, that kind of thing. But we did not refinish floors. We didn't do anything that technical at that point. But without blinking, without hesitating or pausing, I was like, yes, sir, we do. So he's like, okay, I saw some information online. I saw your website. It looks really good, which I learned how to make a website and just made it myself. He was like, I saw your website. Everything looks good. I really would like you to give me a quote on doing the floors, refinishing the floors at all 10 of our sites. And at that point, I think I maybe had 1 or 2 other employees. We were a tiny, tiny company, barely making any money. So I'm like, yeah, I'll give you a quote. Sounded super confident. And he was like, okay, cool. So I ended up sending him a quote, and I could not believe when they accepted it. I could not believe it. I'm like, they gonna actually give me a shot to do this? Like me? They nuts. Like that's what I was thinking. So I had no idea how to do floors, never done it before, never even seen it done before. But ended up calling some people, hiring some people who had experience. And I remember thinking back at the guy who graduated with me who was buying those Jordans. And I remember thinking, I should go buy myself something real nice. Like I've been working hard, even though I don't have a lot of money, I've been working hard. I should go buy me some Jordans or go buy something nice for myself. But I didn't do it. I told myself no because I figure I should save this money because I might need it here in the future. And when it came time for me to do those floors, the amount of money that I spent on this floor machine was almost the exact amount of money that I would have spent on those Jordans, about $200, $250. So if I would have bought those Jordans, because my money was so tight at that point, if I would have bought those Jordans, when it came time for me to buy this floor machine, I wouldn't have had the money to do it. So I wouldn't have been able to make the money that we made. So we ended up making, if I remember correctly, I think it was $16,000, and I made that in like 2.5 weeks doing these floors. And mind you, I was used to making $667 a month. So making $16,000 in just a couple of weeks was crazy. So that's that's part of why I have this up here. Is like, do you buy the floor machine or do you buy yourself some Jordans? And that was one of the things that turned my life around. That one instance turned my life around. It never changed from there. So, or I never changed that mentality since then. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that specifically. So at the top, you'll see it says $250 shoes. Nope, I bought a floor machine, right? And then it got to the point where I was like, I made $16,000 in about 2.5 weeks or so. So I had some pretty decent money. And then it was like, do I go on like a $5,000 vacation, take my wife, splurge? Since we've earned it, we've worked hard, do we splurge with this money now? And I was like, nope. So what did I do with that money? Ended up hiring somebody to oversee my Google ads because I was like, we need to grow this business a little bit more. So I'm going to invest into the business, have this guy who does Google ads and search engine stuff for me. So he ended up doing that, made the business grow even more. So then I was like, do I go out and buy myself a fancy car? Do I buy all the Jordans I want to? Should I go out and buy 10 or 15 pairs now that I could afford it? Do I buy myself a real fancy car? And I was like, nope. Then I started buying rental property. And then I rent that out to somebody. And then without even thinking, I'm making money while I'm sleeping because every night that they stay in my property, they paying me money for it. And then it was like, it just keeps growing. The numbers keep growing. And then it's like, okay, do I buy myself some big crazy house to live in since we're making more money? Should I buy this big crazy house that I really like and my wife likes? And then it was like, no, I'm gonna invest $25,000 to $30,000 in a new daycare center. So now instead of having 8 kids in our house, we can have up to 159 kids in a daycare center, and they each pay us $200 per week. You see, so like the numbers just keep snowballing. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then before you know it, you're able to buy things that looked super expensive to you at one point. Now they become almost like a drop in the bucket and you don't miss it as much. So after doing this so many times, I ended up buying my dream car, which was a Range Rover Sport. Like I always wanted a Range Rover Sport. I always wanted a white one with dark tinted windows and black rims, and I ended up buying it. And it's not one of those things where I took out a bunch of debt to do it. I didn't finance it. I was blessed to buy it with cash money. I just said, well, how much does this cost? They told me, boom, wrote the check, done deal. So what should you get from this story? What am I praying that you get from this story? The first thing is buy things that make you money. Don't just buy things that are expensive, but buy something that's going to actually make you money. And that's what I started doing once I started to do that snowballing effect. I'm like, okay, I could buy a really nice house or buy my wife a car if I want to, but maybe I should buy a rental property, spend $50,000 on this rental property, and then it's going to bring me $600, $700, $1,000 every month. That's one thing that I'm hoping you get from this. Not hoping, I don't say hoping. One thing I'm praying that you get from this. Other thing is run your own race. Like I was so concerned about what other people were doing. It was driving me crazy. Every now and again I may do that. Like if I'm on Facebook, which I try to stay away from. But every now and then if I get on there and I see somebody who's doing really, really well, I'll say, man, I need to do something like that. But just run your own race. Don't compare yourself to what everybody did at your school or compare yourself to people you graduated with. The only comparison that you should be making is compare today's version of you and compare that with yesterday's version of you. Try to get a little bit better every single day and you'll be doing just fine. The third thing I'm praying that you get is opportunities. They present themselves in all kinds of ways. You just have to make sure that you are ready when it presents itself. So I never tell somebody to lie. Like I would never say that. But the lie that I told changed my life. When the guy called me and he said, "Do you clean floors?" I lied my butt off. I was like, "Yeah, we do." Because my thought was, if you're paying, I'm going to figure out how to do them and I'm going to be better than anybody else in this whole city or state because I'll figure out how to do them better than they will. And my determination is going to carry me to do that. So I knew that. I was ready for that opportunity. I did not. I'm telling you, I wish I could press play and show it to you because I did not even hesitate when homeboy asked me, do you clean floors? Because I was thinking, this is an opportunity. Yes, sir, I do clean floors. It was just like that. And then the fourth thing that I'm praying that you get from this is the power of telling yourself no. Eventually, I think it is really good and really important to tell yourself yes. Like I told you earlier, there were many times where I was like, I should buy my wife works really hard. I work really hard. Maybe it's time to upgrade and buy us a nice big house. But I told myself no so many times on that. And instead of spending that money there, I invested it into my businesses. I invested it into myself and learning and education. And then before I knew it, it was like, yeah, I can actually afford to pay for that house and not miss it. Or I can afford to buy that car and not miss it. So the power of telling yourself no is extremely important, extremely important. And that's one of the things when I do consulting with people, I tell them right up front, if you don't have the discipline to tell yourself no, you're not going to make it in business. You're not going to become successful. You got to be disciplined enough to tell yourself no, because today's no is going to be 1,000 yeses later on from now. If you tell yourself no today on spending $150 on some shoes, and then you tell yourself no tomorrow about $150 on some shoes, and you keep doing that over and over and over, before you know it, after a few weeks, you'll have thousands of dollars to buy just about whatever you want to. It's just a discipline thing. All right, so that's the story that I got for you today. I've told this story many times. I typically tell folks it's a crazy story because, I lied in the beginning of it, telling somebody that I did clean floors. I made $16,000 in just a couple of weeks. And then the craziest part about that story is that we did that floor job so well that the guy who initially called me ended up calling me again. And he was like, since you all did the floor so well, would you mind giving me a quote to clean Monday through Thursday at all 10 of these locations? And I was like, yeah. And we ended up getting that contract, and that was about $250,000 a year. So, so just being ready for that opportunity ended up changing my life because that opportunity, we ended up snowballing it into a bunch of other really big opportunities. Changed my life. So thankful and blessed about that opportunity, obviously. So that's all I got for you today. Do you have any crazy stories like this where there was an opportunity presented in front of you and you just so happened to be ready for it? I'm really interested in hearing those kind of stories. Also, is there anybody who has an opportunity that you think back and you say, man, I wasn't quite ready for it at that time? I'm curious to know what those are too. So let me know if those opportunities, when they presented themselves, I want to know what those opportunities were that you were ready for. And then also, what opportunities were there that you weren't ready for and you kind of kick yourself for it now? All right, that's all that I got for you today. As always, I appreciate you watching. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I truly appreciate that. Take care. God bless. Peace.